Alrighty, so this is one of the boxes, the landing gear one, which I had mentioned in the inventory video that I've got all categorized and all nice together and easy to see. What I've done though is I've taken the parts that I know I'm going to need for the landing gear and I've put them into my working box. And this is pretty much everything but the tire and the rim, aka a wheel. And I'll be pulling the parts out of here. You just use them by common sense and group them by common sense. You know, you're not going to be putting on any cables or anything, so they're not in here. So everything that I need to build the left landing gear is in this box. I hope. I'm pretty sure I have everything I need. If not, simply go back to the landing gear, find the part you need, and keep going. So back over here, we're going to take a quick look at the tire and the rim, or wheel, as it's referred to in the manual. We've always known these out in the West as rims, but I guess they can be called wheels too. We've got the tire. Mine are tubeless tires and non-split rims. If you have split rims, the installation is rather unique. Definitely go online, see how split rims are put together. And there's a lot of good people out there. Look at aircraft, how aircraft split rims are put together. Not somebody's tires on their truck or something like that. That's a little different. But the procedure is close to the same, though. You got to be careful on split rims because you've got two pieces here that cramp together, or clamp together, and bolts hold them together. And because they are split, sometimes the tube will get caught in here and get pinched. So there's ways to get around that too. So you can get a tube in there without it being pinched. Some people put tape around the split, and as it comes together, it protects the tube from getting caught in the split. Others put a little bit of air, very little, but just enough in there to where the tube sits in here, but it won't get pinched also. Some people just take them to a shop and find a shop that'll put them together for them. So that's also an option. What I've got is a little bit different without the tubes. These are tubeless tires. Is definitely have to get the bead here, which is on both sides of the tire, of course, against the edges of my rim. And to get them in there is kind of or to get it to do that is kind of a pain. There's several ways of doing it. I'll explain that when I get there. I won't show you the way I do it because just to give you the ideas of what's available and leave the decision up to you. Now you'll see that the rim, or the wheel, is almost as wide as the tire itself. So how do these beads, the bead of the tire, how do they get clear out to the edge of the rim to pop on? That's one of the things I'll explain to you. I won't show you how I did it, but I'll explain it, and you can make your decisions. First thing, though, to look at is to jump to the manual, Chapter 1, and it's fuselage assembly, and the first section of it is landing gear, main landing gear and brakes. So read through this section of it. It explains some of the things you do and do not do. Just good information. Now, like I told you in the inventory video, this is not IKEA. This is not step-by-step. They're not going to do that with you. The manual would be that, thicker than the Bible, thicker than the IRS tax documentation. What they do is they give you general information on how to put this stuff together. Some of the pictures will apply. For instance, this one does, and some will not. This one doesn't apply to mine because I actually have an axle with threads at both ends, and I put a nut on where this is a washer with a kata key to hold the wheel on. So it may be a little bit different. You have to think things through a bit. There's plenty of pictures to see how things are done. And again, ask questions if you don't understand. I'm terrible with comprehending written documentation. I'm a learner by basically seeing it done. Visual learner, there we go, there's the word. And so this is really difficult, and I had to, and we're just talking the wheel here. it was really difficult for me to first understand it until I got with some of my friends on the forums and said, "Hey, what's this mean?" And they explained it, and we discussed it a little bit, and now I understand what's going on. It's not very long. I think it's 5 pages total, and then you go on to the I believe they're called cabin. I think that's what the suspension is pronounced, cabin suspension, and you go on to build that. So we'll back up. I'm not going to read this to you or anything like that. That's boring. You can do that yourself. And we'll start putting this thing together and get me a left gear done. Okay, so I lied a little bit. I'm cheating a little bit here and showing you how I do this. You can see the rim just barely fits in there. A little bit of soapy water, in this case, simple green, and it'll pop right in there. Let me set the camera down and rotate that sucker in there. Shit. Alrighty, well, whew, I got the first side in. That's going to be the easy one. And yes, I had to use a screwdriver and slowly pry it in until it slid on there and got on there all the way. So let me get the second one going here, and we'll see how long that takes. All right, so I've got this one started, the other side of it, but notice there's soap around that. So definitely use your soap liberally. It helps to slide this stuff around. Otherwise, that rubber sticks like glue to that rim or that wheel, and it's a pain in the butt to get in there. So definitely use a lot of soap. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay, one aired up tire. So how did I get these beads to seat against the rim so I have a good solid tire? Well, it's not too difficult, really. The way I did it, I kind of regret saying this because somebody's going to screw it up for sure. As you know, the tire did not touch the rim. The bead did not touch the rim. That's a problem. So what you end up doing is laying it flat like this on a surface, and there's the gap between the rim and the bead, and very, 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 very lightly you squirt some ether starting fluid down into the rim, all the way around. The big problem that you see on YouTube is people dump a half a can in there. Yeah, it doesn't take much. Just that's it. That's all that's needed. If you do not enough, it'll just flame out and be fine. If you put too much, you're going to blow this thing all up and it'll be nasty. So number one, not very much ether down in there. Very, very little. Do it all the way around. Do not just do it here because you won't get an explosion, and that's kind of what you need. You need an explosion to pop this tire out far enough so both beads on both sides touch the rim and they'll lock in place. Now, here's the next one that these idiots on YouTube keep forgetting about. You see this valve stem down in here? Take it out. Use a valve stem tool and take it out. That gives air some place to go instead of exploding a tire. You may save the tire that way if you put too much ether in there. Just be very, very careful in doing this. You do not hold a match down here. You don't want to be near this. You want to have a propane torch or something like that, a lighter with a long extension on it, just something that you can get close to that ether. Once it gets in there, it's going to pop this tire real quick and pop both sides out, and they seat. And then once it's cooled for a moment, you can go ahead and put your valve stem back in, and then you can go ahead and air it up to about 6 pounds is what I got this one's at. But you can air it up to whatever you want. But very, very important. Let me reiterate once again, this is dangerous. It's not the best way to do it. The other method uses a large air tank with a very large nozzle, and they stick the nozzle down towards the gap that's between the tire and the rim, and then they pull a very large valve that shoves air in there so fast that it pops the tire. Now you can take it to Discount Tire or any other tire place, and they can do that for you. It's a safer way to do it. It's much easier to do. There's no chance of getting anything to explode on you. This is the way I've always done it since I've been 13 years old. It does work if you do it correctly and if you're safe about it. All's good, and I have a tire ready to go. Okay, so our next step here is to put on the hub, which is going to hold one side to the rim, the other side, the six-starred side, holds the disc or rotor for the brake. And as you can see on this, I've already got the bearings in here. And I'm sorry about that. I should have waited and showed you how I did this. Lots of times these bearings won't fit inside of these pieces of aluminum. So the normal thinking is, well, get a block, put on top of it, and pound them in, right, with a hammer. That's probably not the best way. One of my friends, again on the Badland forum, said, take the aluminum, put it in the oven, 350, 400 degrees, let it get really hot. Take the bearings, put them in a plastic bag, and throw them in the freezer. Let them get really cold. What that does is it shrinks the bearing down, and it makes the hole, this part here that the bearing fits in the aluminum here, expand. So the two slide together. In fact, they'll fall out typically. You got a hot glove, of course, because this thing's going to be really hot. And you'll drop the bearing in there, and then you'll go like this to turn it over to put the other one in, and the bearing falls out on the counter. So just something to be aware of. If you're going to do that, lay it on its side and then flip it up real quick so it holds that bearing in there. Once that cools down, the aluminum cools down, and the bearings warm up a little bit, they're not going to come out. They're in there for good. So that works out real well. So how's this go in the tire? Well, pretty simple, really. You're going to have your disc right here. So you can see that looks pretty good. That actually would work, but this would not work. Number one, the disc isn't going to be far enough out for the brake to get to, for the caliper to get to. And two, how are you going to air up your tires if you've got this disc in the way? So that's obvious that it goes the other way. So it's definitely got to go in this way, just like that. Now I had a little trouble and with the right tire, and I've had a little trouble with the left one, and I'll show you. These are the bolts that came with it, and look, they won't go through. So I've got to drill these out slightly. I believe that's 5/8, I'm not sure. I'll have to match it up and make sure. And also, as we screw this in, if I can get it in with one hand, there we go. The threads aren't real clean. So over here I've got my drill. Where'd I put my bits? Oh, there they are. Got a set of cobalt drill bits. So there's my bits. Definitely worth the investment to have new drill bits. Also got my tap and die set, so I'm going to tap these out and make sure the threads are clean, and then drill these out to make sure the 5/8 can get through them. So let me get that done, and I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. Okay, so I've got these threads in here retapped, and as you can see, the bolts are going through really nicely. So I will put these on the wheel, or rim, as I call them. And the way that these bolts go in, it's up to you really how you want to put them in. Some people have the nuts here that go on the outside of the tire, so they just unscrew the nut to get the tire off, and these act as studs through the aluminum here, through the hub. I don't particularly care for that design, so I've changed it up a little bit, and I'm actually going to go, I gotta get this all the way out, a little booger. I'm actually going to go a little bit different. I'm going in through the tire this way, or through the rim this way, and so the bolt comes out the other end, and then I'm going to use, because these are threaded, I'm going to use the nuts to lock down on this side of it, which will lock the threads in this hub and in the nut, and these will never back out. It's virtually impossible for them to back out. Now, to take the tire off, of course, I have to loosen up the inner nut, which may be a little difficult to get to because the ring is going to be up here for the brake, but I think I can snake down in there through the holes that are in the ring. I can snake down a socket wrench to get in there to loosen these up, which then once they come off, these should back out from the other side without a problem. But let me go ahead and get those on, and we'll move forward. Slow but steady. Okay, I almost forgot this step. Because these bolts won't fit through there. You can see they're just too tight. I forgot to get out the drill bit and drill these out. And by the way, I kept saying 5/8. These are 5/16. And how do I know? It's the only drill bit I've used so far out of this kit. So they have to be the 5/16. Or excuse me, let's see. They might be, yes, they're the 5/16 because they're here. Yep, definitely 5/16. So let me drill these out so I can get the bolts through the other side and screw them into the hub here because these are threaded, and then put the nuts down on them and should be good to go from that point. All right, all drilled out. Let's make sure. Viola, that's the way it's supposed to work. If I can get it out of there. There we go. One of the things you need to know when drilling out holes like this, and this is covered in the manual, don't use any pressure. Just put the drill bit up there when you're drilling anything that's got to be cleaned out. And there we go. And the drill will fall right through there. It'll go through straight, is what I'm trying to say. If you put pressure, you might tilt it back or forward, and then your hole's not straight. If you just hold it on there centered and don't put any pressure, just start up the drill and let it slowly dig through this. They cover the better ways to use small bits and large bits, how fast you should run the drill. So just take that into consideration and you'll be fine. These are good straight holes, so I've got no problems. Now, one of the things that I'm doing is these bolts come with washers. I'm actually putting the washer on here because I don't want the bolt itself to dig into this aluminum. And the washer on the inside isn't going to make much of a difference because there's no way for this bolt to unscrew itself. Once it gets through to the other side, let me get this all the way down in there real quick. Now I'm going to take a socket, of course, and tighten these up a little bit because they are definitely threaded on this side, as you can see in this aluminum piece. So they're holding everything quite nicely together. And then once I put the nut, which these are locking nuts, once I put the nut on this side and tighten it down, what it's doing is it's pulling the threads that are locked inside of the hub, and it's pulling the nut down on them, compressing those threads. So there's no way that this could ever back out, ever. It's just not possible unless for some reason this nut comes off, which with it being a locking nut, it's not going to come off. And even then, let's say that this does back out. This bolt has to unthread itself all the way out before it would let go of this hub. So it's got quite a bit of, I guess you could say, retaining power. So let me get these nuts on here, and we'll be just about ready, I think, to put the disc on. Okay. One thing I want to mention is remember that these bolts have to be pretty tight, but you don't want to over tighten them. Remember that they're actually cranking into a piece of aluminum here. So if you know anything about aluminum, it's very strong, but you can strip out the threads fairly easily. So get them good and snug, really good and snug, but you don't want them over tightened, otherwise you'll just strip it out and you'll be buying a new hub. So the nuts now, because they are locking nuts, will slip on here quite nicely. There we go. Spin those down, and I'm going to go ahead and put the other two here on, and then we'll move on to putting the disc on. Piece of cake. All right, let's see if I can keep my finger out of the way. I went ahead and put the disc or rotor onto the hub here. I didn't think I needed to really show you how to do it. It's 6 bolts here that come with the kit. Now there is one difference that I've made on this that you don't know about, and that is I had to stand the disc off. Let's see if I can get a shot right there, just a little bit. Come on, focus. Doesn't want to focus for me. Just a little bit off of the hub because my calipers would touch the side of the tire here. And so I've had to put washers in between the hub here and the bottom of the disc so it pulls it out slightly. And on the right, you can see it's still fairly close. It was much closer. In fact, it rubbed when I had it without the washers on there. So I had to put washers to bring this out slightly. And the part you don't have to worry about it too much because the hub itself, you can see my finger on the other side there. There's nothing supporting there. It's all supported directly under the bolt. So as long as you've got the washers in there, that's just as strong or darn near close as having this disc or rotor directly against the hub itself. So it's no big deal. Got them in there and got them in the way that I like them. They seem to work well. So our next step is to move on to putting an axle on and then starting to assemble the A-arm, which will come up here and hold the landing gear. And I've got to make adjustments there. I already know what I've got to do because I've already made them over here, but I'll show you what I've got to do. You may not have to do these adjustments, or you may. That's going to be something you'll have to assemble, start fitting pieces together, see if they fit well. If they don't, make the adjustments necessary to make them fit well. Okay, looking at the manual, there are different types of axles and different types of mounting that come with this airplane depending on what you order. Mine has a nut, which you'll see this standard nut here. It's the same size as what comes with the kit for mine. I picked these up as temporary because I don't want to wear out the nylon ring on the actual ones that I'll be using. So these are kind of like in standby mode while I use that. The washer that comes with it is probably the same one that you'll get. The other, or the difference I should say, is you see that my axle is threaded at both ends. The other axles, I believe, are not threaded at the outside portion where the nut would normally go on for mine. It's just a straight shaft, and you put the washer on, and then you drill a hole for a carter key to slip through, and that's what holds your wheel on. So again, we're talking ounces, but ounces count in ultralights. In my case, because I have a titanium aircraft, I've got a little wiggle room, so it's lighter than a standard 4130 built aircraft. So I get to use a nut. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to put that nut on, same as this one, just down far enough to where I like it in the position that it's in. I'll throw the washer on there, which you can see the washer right there, and get that axle in there. The axle does not screw in. It will fall right back out. So something to be aware of. If you flip the tire and you've got the axle in it, it's going to slide right out until you get it actually mounted onto the A-frame, or excuse me, the A-arm here. And then it'll stay in place and won't slide out anymore. Okay, so axle slides right in. One of the things that you're going to have to take a look for is I had to actually run this across the wire brush over here and get it cleaned off. It was just rusted to pieces. I mean, I'm over exaggerating there. It was rusted, but it was a light rust, but still, it needs to be clean. And then I'll throw some WD-40 on it, and later on I'll put some grease on it. But right now, just going to go ahead and install it. The washer's down there, and didn't want to go through the washer right now. There you go. And away it goes. So very sweet. And of course, comes out the other side. So we'll go ahead and put the A-arm and put the caliper, which is sitting over here, on it, and we'll go from there. All right, now the fun part. We're going to put the caliper brake bracket on, and this is the mount for it right here on the axle shaft itself, and of course on the A-arm. Now I got lucky in that my chainsaw sharpener happens to be right next to my vise, which is holding the arm, which allows the wheel to rotate and be easy to work on. So you may want to rig up something that allows you to work on this without it moving around, because if you have both pieces moving around, it just drives you crazy. Over here, I've got my caliper. Got the caliper bracket washers, caliper bracket nuts, and caliper bracket bolts. So I've got all the parts I need there. This is the bracket itself. And the fun part is, of course, now learning how to put this on. There's only one way that it goes on, that it works. So you got to kind of figure it out by putting it on and trying it a few times and seeing how it's going to fit. Now already I know I have to cut my axle shaft here down. The shaft is too far, and the bracket, the caliper is actually going to set way too far over here. If these line up with the bracket would be right here, and of course I can't get to the disc that way. Whoops, good thing dropping it. There we go. The other thing you need to know about the caliper is that it's going to be backwards from the one that's on the other wheel. Now, why is that? Well, these are made for these brakes are made for off-road bikes, on-road bikes probably too. But you notice on a bicycle, these both go on the same side of the bicycle. Of course, on an airplane, they don't. One goes one way, one goes the other, and you got to just figure out exactly where it's going to go. So I'm going to figure that out just by trial and error and get it to where it needs to be. It's probably going to be somewhere up here is what I'm thinking. And then I'll probably have to do a measurement, see how far my caliper is from my disc, translate that over to, I can't get it to slide with one hand, there we go. Translate that over here and find out where I need to cut my shaft here to bring this far enough, the disc close enough to where the mount is. Now the caliper does have some adjustment screws on it that allow you to move it in and out slightly. And then you also have washers, as included over here, that will allow this bracket to be able to be moved in and out if necessary. Now it's best if it's straight on there, and if you put in my opinion, if you put the screws with the washers up here. But that's up to you, it's your call. And just to give you an idea of how far I'm going to need to cut, there's a screw or a bolt that's going to go through here, right about here, and stick down, and that holds the shaft in. You'll drill a hole in the shaft, and then the bolt goes through it after you drill a hole in the tubing, and I'll show you how to do that really well so everything's aligned properly, and that keeps the axle from sliding out. Just to give you an idea though, that's the bottom of the shaft, is clear over here. I need that shaft clear over here, so I'm going to have to take quite a bit off of here, and I'll get that done, and this will slide over nicely. The caliper will be here. It'll fold over the disc nicely. It won't touch the tire. I'll have my hole here for the bolt that'll hold the axle in, put the nut on, and basically this part's done. So let's get going. So I've found out which way, by trial and error, that my caliper goes on, and matching it up to the one that I've done over here. Looks the same. Now, I haven't tightened all the bolts down. This one's still loose, and this one's tight though, so I can use this to get a good measurement. I also tightened up those to make sure I get a good measurement. One of the things I forgot to mention is I ordered additional washers, 2 additional washers, 1 for each wheel. The kit does not come with a washer that goes in here. It's not necessary, but it's something that I like to have just to have some reinforcement there. Otherwise, all I've got is my shaft here, axle shaft, pushing against the ring here of the bearing, and I'd prefer to have a little bit extra support there, so I put that in, and it seems to let the wheel spin quite nicely. So I like that idea. Let me go ahead and put this wheel here and this hub right against here, and I'll do the measurement and see how far I have to cut this shaft back, and I'll mark it just with a simple Sharpie, and then put it over here on the little cutter, the chop saw, and I'll cut it. Now, the ideal thing would be to have a full-size chop saw. I've got this little Harbor Freight one, little dinky one. It's done me well for years. It does make cutting this a little bit difficult because, of course, the mounts are already on it, and the welds and such get in the way. So I have to be really careful when I cut this because you only get one shot at it. Otherwise, you could screw it up bad and end up having to order another A-arm here from Badland. But so far, I did that one right. Let's see if I can do this one right. Okay, so this is the fun part. Now I've pushed the tire over here against the washer here, so the axle shaft is all the way in. You do have to be careful not to bump it because it'll cause your measurement to go a little screwy if you do have to do this cut. Some of you won't. And what I'm going to do is measure out to where this slit is right in here, and I don't know if you can see just a little bit of light coming in there, and it comes out to 1 inch and looks like 5/16 right about there to get into the slot where the brake is, where the brake pads are. So easy, there we go, right there. So it'd be 4. It could be 6, but I'm going to cut it at 5, and that way, in case I am a little bit long, I can grind it off. That's much easier than trying to add anything on. So always measure twice and then cut once, as they say, and that applies to this big time. So let me go ahead and get that cut or marked on the shaft from here out, and from this down, make sure both measurements are identical, and I'll mark it, and then I'll go ahead and cut it and keep my fingers crossed. Alrighty, so if I measure it out, I'm at 1 5/16 on the nose. So let me take off the caliper here and the caliper mount and put that on the chop saw and get this cut. Okay, cut's done, and you can see it's kind of nasty looking, so I'll take a Dremel and clean that out. Use the wire brush here mounted on the table, my workbench, and clean the outside of it, and then go ahead and set it all back up, and hopefully that's going to slide onto here quite nicely. We shall see. All right, that cleaned up rather nicely. So let's see what we got here. And Viola, she rotates. Now it does drag. It's going to drag until I do some adjustments on that caliper, possibly having to put some washers in here to scoot the caliper over. Most likely just adjust the caliper bolts themselves, and that'll take care of that problem. So looks good though. Doesn't spin as good as the other one, but I'll get it there. And you'll see I can only stick my finger in that far, so that means the axle is right there, which makes it much easier for me to drill a hole down through this thing so I can put in the axle pin that will hold the shaft in place. But very pleased with the way this came out so far. Just not difficult, just take your time at it, and got good clearance between the tire and the the caliper, so no issues there. Looks like it's going to work out really well. So let me get this hole drilled, and I'll show you how to do that to make sure that you get a perfect hole straight through. Because the biggest problem with drilling in two different items is getting the two different, I guess, shafts, is getting the drill to go through them both at the exact same place to fit a bolt in there. Sometimes people will get off at an angle, they'll go off at an angle instead of going centered. All kinds of fun stuff happens, but I'll show you how to get around that, and it's really easy to do. All right, so the axle bolt that's going to hold the axle in is approximately 1 inch in, just about 1 inch in. So I'm going to go here about 1 inch. I'm going to put a dot right at the end of that, and then drill through that. Now, I don't want to drill all the way through, and what I mean is I don't want to drill through both sides of the pipe of the shaft. I want to just drill on this one side. That's it. That's as far as I want to go, and get it as centered as best I can. So let me get that done, and then I'll show you why. All right, so there's the hole. That is I believe, what did I use? 5/16? Yeah, a little 5/16 to get a starting hole in it after tapping it. And then I'm going to have to put I believe I'm going to use a 1/8 to get through this. And I'll just go through this, like I said, the first top layer. I have not drilled through the bottom here, so just the top. Let me get that done and out of the way. Make sure this bolt fits. All right, so the bolt fits nicely. Not real snug, but good enough. Plenty good enough for this. And so you can see it goes down, but there's no hole in the bottom, and I'll show you how to get that in the right place. We're actually going to drill through the shaft. Oh, let me get it. First, let's see if I can do this with one hand. Putting our wheel back on. Make sure you get all the washers, everything in place. And we're going to just kind of simulate it. And it is tight in there a little bit. Hang on a second. Okay, sorry about that. Back. And what I'm going to do with this hole down here is I'm going to use a Sharpie, and I'm going to mark that on the axle right there. And then I'm going to pull the axle out. I'm going to put it on my bench press, drill a hole straight through it, put it back in, take the drill, and then go ahead and drill the other side. The axle hole and this outside hole in the shaft is going to hold that drill bit straight and go straight through and come straight out the other side, so they match. And this bolt then will slip through all of them, and it actually slips from this side. It'll go through all of them, and I'll put a nut on the bottom of this. And other than adjusting the brake caliper, this will be done. Alrighty, so I have Sharpied the little point there where I need to go through. The axle and tire are all the way shoved this way, hard against it, so I know where to drill. It's right there on the bench press. So let me get that axle out of there, get it on the bench press, get a hole drilled, and keep moving forward. By the way, I do get all my parts out as I'm doing this out of my working bin over there. And when I know a bag is empty, like that one still got washers in it, I still need to use that one. So I know they go on somewhere, and they tell you right on the package. Here, I'm done. I don't need the axle shaft pin nuts anymore. Same thing with landing gear, axle shaft pin bolt. Yep. And disc brake rotor. Yep, it's on there. So as these bags become empty, I toss them back into the working bin, and I know they're done. It's something I don't have to mess with anymore. So let me get this drill press out and punch the hole in this. And just to show, there's the dot. So I need to nail that. So make this as straight as possible in the drill press and go straight down right through it. So we'll see how that works. and Viola. Nice straight hole all the way through. By the way, if anybody hasn't told you and you've never used a drill press before, when you get windings like this coming out as you're drilling, that's showing you've got the right amount of pressure going through. You want a nice, even pressure, and it'll just sit there and peel that metal right out into a nice little windy, twiggly thing like that, and shows that you've actually got your pressure down right. If you get a bunch of this small stuff, you're probably either too slow. If you go too fast, it'll actually cause the drill bit to jam up, so you don't want to do that either. So we got the hole there. I'm going to clean it up with the wire brush here and put it all back together, and we'll see if that bolt fits through. All right, so there'll be a hole there. Bolt fits right in real nicely. So really happy with that. And now we're going to take the drill and drill through the shaft and the axle at the same time, and it'll pop out the other side, and we'll have a hole straight through, which this will fit into perfectly. And there we go. Looks pretty holy to me. Let's see how this bolt fits in here from the top. I'll put a washer on before I tighten it down or anything, but just like that. That's going to hold that puppy in place. Perfect. Very happy. That shaft cannot come out though. It's impossible. It's got a bolt, or I should say the axle won't come out. It's got a bolt in there. It's not going anywhere. So that's that part. I'll get this mounted and do some adjustments on the caliper and be done with this puppy. There we go, all done. Well, I got to put the caliper back on and all that, of course. But to give you an idea of how good these bearings are and this hub and how this goes together so well, an idea how it goes together so well, watch. That was just a light push on the wheel. And it goes, and it goes, and it goes. And it'll spin this way for quite a long time. It is slowing down, but it's taken a while. Bearings in these things are really good. The setup is really good. There's zero friction or very little friction, and should work out quite nicely on the plane. Hope the brakes work well. Alrighty, it can't get much better than this. Caliper is adjusted. Of course, it'll have to be readjusted once it's on the plane and all that, but get this. No drag at all, none. Beautiful. And then hit the brake. Yep, she stops. So, working like a champ. That's how to put together a wheel, at least on the F5. Maybe a little bit different on yours, but the procedures are basically the same. The arm's looking good. I've got the left and right done. So, the next thing is put the suspension on the front. And I might take this off and drill a hole for a cotter pin in there and put in a castle nut instead. But truly, the nuts that are on there that are nylon, there's no turning force against them, so they should not ever back off. And it's something you put on your checklist, pre-flight checklist. Just look down there, and if you don't see axle, something's wrong. It's that simple. But I can't believe how smooth this tire and wheel roll. Quiet as can be. Amazing. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll look at putting it on the plane.
There's a message for you.
Oh, there's a message for me. Oh, how thrilling. We'll get the suspension on and see if we can get the bird standing on her own two legs back there, and maybe even get a tail wheel on there too.